Greetings and welcome to Hexed Encountered. I'm Joe. In this video, we're going to do a quick first look and setup for the game Antietam. This is the second edition. This is from Worthington Old School Wargames. And this was the first of their Brigade level American Civil War series. I've already done video on another game in the series, which I think was the second or third, but I think it's the second, which was Shiloh. So yeah, we're going to play this. Obviously, I just did blue and gray deluxe edition Antietam game recently, and even though it's not September, we're doing a few different things with Antietam this month. So let's take a look. Well, let's flip it over real quick here. So this is Volume 1 in the Civil War Brigade Battle Series, and now I want to look at Shiloh and see what number that is. And yes, that one is Volume 2. So Shiloh is Volume 2. Of course, I'm going to just rip right into the shrink wrap here. Why not? So yeah, so you get a look at the, well, we will take a look here at the back of the box here in a moment. All right. That. Okay. So refight the bloodiest day in American history with this classic Hex Encounter game. Okay, so this gives you the basics on it. It's each infantry and cavalry piece is a brigade. Strength point. Each strength point represents 100 men. So here we have Magleton. He's got a strength of 10,000 men. Pretty easy. Historically detailed board game, 250 yards per hex. Based on extensive research of the order of battle, the counters accurately reflect the armies of North and South. You can see the map here. Sharpsburg is right here. Here's Antietam Creek. This is a little bend in the Potomac over here. So inside the box, we've got a mounted game board, 4 counter sheets, dice, rulebook, battle book, player aid cards. It is for 2 players, but can be played solitaire. Thumbs up. 4 out of 10 difficulty, ages 14 and up, and victory within 3 to 6 hours. All right, let's open it up. Okay, 2d10. And we've got our Confederate chain of command. And the Union chain of command. George B. McClellan in charge. Then you've got his corps commanders. Hooker, Sumner, Porter, Franklin, and then the cavalry under, well, you got Burnside down here. Then you got Mansfield and, well, no, Mansfield's not cavalry, but you've got Pleasanton who has the cavalry corps. So this kind of threw me off, but it was probably the best way they could come up with to fit the entire Union Army on, or the Army of the Potomac here on this one sheet. Now the Confederates have a smaller army. Of course, Robert E. Lee is the overall commander. Then you've got 2 of the bigger subordinate commanders under him, Stonewall Jackson and James Longstreet. And then, of course, you have all of their subordinate units for the 2. And then Stewart was the cavalry leader reporting directly to Lee. So that is our chain O command. Now we've got our brigade series rules. I won't go into this overly much. If you want to see a relatively detailed review of the rules, check out the Shiloh first look, because I did go through it in there. As you can see, there's not a lot to it. It's an 8-page rule book. It's a very straightforward game. You use these here to determine your strength, to kind of track your strength as your units suffer losses in combat. It's a strength point marker placed under the unit to show its new lower strength point. It's a pretty easy and solid way to kind of track that in the game. You've got shattered units. When it loses half of its original SP, you flip it to the backside and it's considered shattered. And then shattered units may not enter an enemy zone of control, but do not have to exit enemy zone of control during movement, and can fire offensively and defensively. Shattered units may not use the column movement bonus. Right? Like I said, I'm not going to go through the rules. We'll obviously use the rules when we play, but I do want to move on. So here's the playbook. So let's move the box out of the way. So the playbook is, the specific rule applications for this particular game in the series. Now, this was the first game, so this was the first one, but I played 2 before 1 because I wanted to play Shiloh in April, because April was when Shiloh took place. So this one is obviously Antietam. This is Eastern Theater. Shiloh was, of course, the Western Theater, where we had U.S. Grant and Johnston commanding the Confederates. Here it's McClellan versus Lee. So you've got Union off-map movement. Okay, so the following series rules do not apply, which you'll see this in I'm assuming all the games. There was some of this in Shiloh as well. There are no breastworks. There are nothing that can be burnt down here in this. That was true in Shiloh as well. No bridges, depots, or rail lines can be burnt down. Searching for fords. No fords need to be found. In this battle, Snavely's ford had been searched out by the Union prior to the battle. No night turns in this game. It's a one-day battle. Union off-map movement, scenarios 3 and 4 only. Union player may exit units off the south end of the game board through hex 4505. On the turn the units move off board, the Union player rolls the dice to determine when they re-enter the board using the following chart. Let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, so based on your die roll on the old D10, you'll find out when they can return. They re-enter through 4508 to 4510. If Confederate units occupy those hexes, the Union player may bring his units in the first open hex to the west of those hexes. The units may enter in a Confederate zone of control. Okay, then scenarios. Battle lends itself well to 3 set-piece scenarios as well as the full battle. Each scenario should take 1 to 2 hours to play, with the full battle scenario taking 3 to 6. Okay, so Union is the first player in all scenarios. In setup and reinforcements, unless it states otherwise, when speaking of divisions, it means all units, including artillery and the division leader, who may be placed with any unit in his command. Each corps or division commander starts set up with or adjacent to any unit in their corps or division. Artillery may start limbered or unlimbered. Cavalry may start mounted or dismounted. The Confederate Army did not have a corps designation at this point in the war. We use it for ease of explanation. That's a note. Okay, then you've got your setup here. They have their setup hexes directly on the units. If I pick this up here and we look at Jackson's Reserve 1, you can see there 2712. That is the hex in which he will set up. So this is scenario 1, the morning attack. Then you've got scenario 2, Bloody Lane. And on the next page, scenario 3, Burnside Bridge. So this, as you would expect, is Burnside with the 9th Corps and his forces trying to force the bridge across Antietam Creek. We'll see that on the map. And then you've got your Confederate setups. Then you've got the full battle with each one having its own special rules. And then you've got your casualty record, your strategies for both sides, Union and Confederate. Designer notes by one of the Wylies, Mike or Grant. I'm not sure which one wrote this, but they are both listed as being the designers of the game. Art by Sean Cook. Thank you to Jim Miller and Mark Wylie. So designer notes. They are from Virginia, so this was not in Virginia, but in Maryland. But obviously, I think being Virginian, as he mentions here, kind of sparked a desire to create a series of games on the Civil War. All right. So yeah, this is Brigade level. Brigade level keeps most Civil War battles below 100 combat units and keeps the game moving along quickly, as neither player will be moving and activating all of their units in a turn. So that's part of the notes. Here is the chart for this game. The morale bands, all the units will have a morale of either green, black, or gold. Essentially, that equates to the troop quality. So you've got like green troops, regular troops, and then kind of elite troops. Your infantry or movement chart. Infantry, dismounted cavalry, and limbered artillery have 6. Mounted cavalry and leaders have 9. You might say, well, what about unlimbered artillery? They can't move for obvious reasons. They're not limbered. Fire range chart for infantry and dismounted cavalry. Then you've got mounted cavalry, and then unlimbered artillery. They get ×2 of their strength if it's adjacent, and then just 1 at 2 to 5. So unlimbered artillery, or artillery in general, is really the only one that can fire that far. Limbered artillery cannot fire. And then your CRTs right here, and it's very straightforward. M means take a morale check, and then the number is how many steps they lose, essentially. And they have to take a morale check following that. Then you have the R, which means they must retreat 2 hexes, and also, well, 2 or 3 or 4, and also take a morale check. And then your terrain effects modifier, real simple. -2 in woods or town, -3 if they're entrenched immediately behind steep or in the sunken road. That was a feature of this battle, the sunken road. Very hard fighting took place there. +1 target unit is fired on from 3 or more adjacent places. Now, as you can see here, we also have a player aid card with the same information. The other side has the terrain effects chart, which is pretty simple. And then you've got your line of sight blocking. Friendly units being fired over that are adjacent to the target, okay, will block your line of sight. A line of sight is blocked by a hex of higher elevation, that is of higher elevation than the elevation of both firing and target unit, and of course towns and woods. And then you can see the different, how you denote going up a level, down a level, steep hex sides, the creek and the bridge and the ford, etc. All the different terrain types that we'll see in this game. Its movement cost, its terrain bonus for defense, and then whether or not it blocks line of sight. Okay, 1 for both players. So this would be the same thing. Then we get to our counters. Now these are the step counters. So if you started with, say, 10 and took 1 step loss, or 2 step losses, you'd go to an 8, then down 7, 6, 5, right? On the other side, it gets even lower, 1, 2, 3, 4. You also have down here, you've got higher numbers, the 16, 13 to 16, and on the back of that, you've got 9 to 12. Sorry, 9 to 12. So there's a bunch of those because you need them, because many of your units will, of course, take step losses. Then you've got dismounted markers for your cavalry, fired markers for your artillery, even more step markers there for the higher steps. Then, of course, we have our units. These would be the Union Army. So you've got McClellan there. He's the man in charge, Army of Potomac. His corps commander, Hooker. And then the rest of the various corps commanders, and so on. Obviously, they have stars. These are commanders, not fighting units. The fighting units will have a strength here in the corner, right? This is the 1st U.S. sharpshooters under Porter. They've got a strength of 4. And you've got more commanders here. So this is Meade. He reports to Hooker. Then you've got 6 here for this artillery, infantry of 12, and so on. So it's easy to track their chain of command, right? Anderson reports to Meade, who reports to Hooker, and he's got a strength of 6. And you got Howard, who reports to Sedgwick, who reports to Sumner. He's got a strength of 17. So that's a fairly strong unit. This one's a 20 under Dana, and so on. So that's the Union forces. There's plenty of them there. We have counters for casualty markers, casualty tracks, tide of battle. We'll talk about that when we play. And this is the reduced, or what is it called again? I forget what it's called. Sorry. That is shattered. Sorry. Couldn't remember the terminology, but basically this is when they take enough losses that they're below half strength and below. This would, of course, be our Confederate forces. So you have Lee right there at the top, Longstreet and Jackson, and then all the units that are subordinate to those generals. And it works the same exact way. So you have here Posey, who's under R.H. Anderson, who reports to Longstreet, and strength of 10. Pretty straightforward. You have out-of-command markers as well, and Confederate casualty markers, turn marker, and their shattered side. And then we have the map. So So the map is long and thin. Let me get it out, and I may need to reset my shot here. Okay, so here is the top portion of the map. Okay, so this is, I believe, facing north. Is there a compass rose on here? Yes, this is north. So north is up. Okay, when I play this, this is probably going to be turned sideways, just so you know. Just because that's how the battle can kind of lay out for a more widescreen presentation, I guess would be a good way to put it. So this is Antietam Creek here. You've got the upper bridge right here. There's a ford right here. Maybe it's hard to see. It's a bunch of dotted little dots here. Then, of course, you have various terrain features as well. You got some level 3, I think this is. This green here is level 2. The tan is level 1. So there is elevation on this battlefield. You do have some woods. There are farms. You've got farms here and here. Towns. No, I don't think there are any towns on this particular map. This part of the map, I should say. There is definitely towns on this map. And you've got orchard over here. And are there any steep slopes on this half? I don't see one. But here's Dunker Church, which was one of the more famous areas of the battlefield. Or here's the cornfield, Miller's cornfield. Here's the Miller farm right here. There's Miller's cornfield, another famous thing. Another famous piece of the battlefield. Of course, the sunken road is another one, and we'll see that when I do the bottom half of the map, which I'm going to do right now. Okay, so this is the remainder of the map here. So again, Antietam Creek. Here's the middle bridge, and down here is the lower bridge, which is now known as Burnside Bridge because of the Burnside's corps driving across the bridge. Here is a steep elevation mark. This is the town of Sharpsburg. The North, the Union, called this the Battle of Antietam. The South called it the Battle of Sharpsburg. This is Sharpsburg right here. You can see the town. The sunken road is right here. Okay. So this gives extra defensive bonus to units that are in those hexes within the sunken road. They go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this string of hexes right here is the sunken road. And the bend in the Potomac was on the other map, but it was up in that corner up there. So Union forces enter from here. There's also another one on the upper map. And here are exits and re-entry that we heard about in the special rules for the Antietam game. So this is the look at Antietam. Now we're going to set it up for play. That'll be part 2 of this video. It's all in one video, so that the next video will actually be gameplay. All right, so as you can see, the board is set up. Now, couple of things I wanted to talk about before we go over where everybody is and all that stuff is here in our playbook. This is the setup for scenario 4, which is the entire battle. Now, you can see down here, special rules, Union Corps release. So it says each turn the Union player may only activate 2 corps per turn for movement and combat. It can be a different 2 corps each turn, but only 2 maximum may activate during any one turn until additional corps are released. Following rules apply to Union release. The Union player can activate 1 additional corps for each victory point objective captured. The Union may only release 1 corps for the sunken road, regardless of how many hexes he controls, and held at the end of the turn. The additional corps can be activated on the turn following the capture of the objective hex. Infantry and cavalry units and non-activated corps may not move. Artillery and non-activated corps may fire. So you can fire your artillery, but you can't move your units. Now, if you watched my playthrough of the Antietam game in blue and gray, deluxe edition from Decision Games, you had a limit on how many units you could move on the Union side. So this is kind of the same thing. And again, it reflects that whole lack of aggressiveness, shall we say, on the part of George McClellan, who was, of course, the commanding general of the Army of the Potomac at this point in the war. Now, there are a few other things here. Union units in a non-activated corps and begin their turn adjacent to Confederate units do not have to move away and may fire offensively and defensively. This does not activate the corps. If any Confederate unit crosses to the east side of Antietam Creek, all Union corps may activate for the remainder of the game. This, again, is just like in blue and gray. In that game, if the Confederates, who are here, were to cross the creek, and the map is actually turned sideways. North is this way, so east is that way. So this is the western side of Antietam Creek, that's the eastern. If they were to cross the bridge here, say you'd send Toombs right across the bridge, then boom, you've unlocked the entire Union Army to move, which obviously from a Confederate standpoint you would not want to do unless it became extremely necessary for some reason. All right, so talking about the other things here for setup now. Oh, one other thing to mention: reinforcements. So the Confederates have all their reinforcements. The Union reinforcements are those unactivated corps, of which there are two: Porter and Franklin's Corps, which is the 6th Corps. So the Porter Corps actually has some units out on the map. They're right here. That's the 5th Corps. They do have some units out here on the map already. Here on the or off map, right? This is Porter. He's the commander of the 5th Corps. So he's on map with some of his artillery. Most of his corps is off map, and I can show you, like, these are some of their units. About the other brigade, or other division rather of his corps. And then Franklin's 6th Corps has a brigade or a division under Slocum and one under Smith, so they will show up as well here. So we have two units basically two corps that are basically off map at the moment in general. Porter's unit, if you choose to activate it, I believe you can pull those units onto the map. If I remember correctly, it mentions that here. So let's talk about setup now. I did mention the reinforcements for the Confederates. They're over here. They get one on turn 1, one on turn 2. That would be 0700 and 0800. Or I'm sorry, 0600 and 0700. And then at 1400, AP Hill's Corps will arrive as well. And AP Hill's Corps is a very powerful group. So from the Union standpoint, that puts a kind of a clock on your being as aggressive as you can be, given the limitations imposed by the rule system to emulate McClellan's general lack of get up and go. So you can see the basic setup here on the map. We've got Hooker's Corps is here, threatening the left flank of the Confederate position, right? So here is Sharpsburg right here. And then this is obviously the Confederate positions. So you have Longstreet. His forces are on this end, largely. And Jackson's forces are on this side. Now, I have Lee here stacked with Hood in Sharpsburg. And then Longstreet is, where's Longstreet? Right here. And Jackson is actually right next to him. They're somewhat together. But Jackson's obviously the focus of his troops. Basically, his troops run from about here over. There is some, Longstreet has some artillery right here, but his forces are largely over here. Now, in terms of leaders, you can stack them with anybody under their command. I usually start with them stacked with artillery. They don't have to stay there, but that's just how I generally do it. So you do have the Mansfield's 12th Corps is up here. So they are also on the western side of the creek. But all of the rest of the Union forces are either on the eastern side or actually off map, which also would be on the eastern side technically, because we have entry points here and here for the Union. You have an exit point here. Confederate entry point is here. That is where the Confederate reinforcements will come from. They actually came across the Potomac a little further west and south. So let's talk about this scenario. So we can use Playbook Rule 1.1 for Union off-map movement. I mentioned that earlier, where the Union can exit forces off of here and re-enter them here, which would be on the other side of the I almost said Potomac, the Antietam Creek, right? So this is the creek. It can only be crossed in certain places. There's a ford here. There's one here. There are several bridges, as you can see, but you can also send your men off map here and have them re-enter on the other side through these woods right here. So they would have crossed further downstream. The scenario is the full battle. It uses the entire game board. It starts with the 0600 game turn and ends after the Confederate 1900 turn. Each corps and division commander starts set up with or adjacent to any unit in their corps or division. Artillery may start limbered or unlimbered. Cavalry may start mounted or dismounted. I started all the artillery unlimbered. We can always flip it if I want to move anything. The Union Army sets up each unit according to the setup number shown on the front of the counters. Union player decides on the below. Union General McClellan, the Union Army commander, starts set up with or adjacent to any unit in his army. I put him here, kind of center, basically with Sumner's forces or adjacent to Sumner's forces. He's actually sitting on top of one of Porter's artilleries, I think. Yeah. So, but he's kind of in the middle there, and you can see Sumner and Porter are pretty well right next to him. Union Corps units with a setup of asterisk are organized according to the Corps commander's name and placed off board. These may be activated as one of the corps allowed for the Union player and enter through the Union reinforcement hexes of 2000 or 2001 or 3201. Note that the Union 5th Corps of Porter has units that start off-board and on-board. If the 5th Corps activates, the Union may move the on-board units and bring the off-board units on board through the reinforcement hexes. Okay, so if I activate the 5th Corps as one of my two, then I can bring the rest of Porter's Corps on board through here or here, probably here because that's closer to where Porter is. And then eventually we would be able to bring on Franklin's Corps as well. Now on the Confederate side, they set up each unit according to the setup number shown on the front of the counters. Confederate General Lee, who is the Confederate Army commander, starts set up with or adjacent to any unit in his army. He is here, the very eastern end of Sharpsburg. You have a reinforcement schedule. All Confederate reinforcements enter through Hex 4514. That's down here. Enter on 0600 McLaw's division, all units. Enter 0700 R.H. Anderson's division, all units. And enter 0700 Stewart's Cavalry Corps, Hampton. So Hampton is actually sitting on top of that stack. And here he is. And you can see there it says a 2 above his strength of 18. That's the turn that he is entering on. The other units, so if we were to pick somebody up here, like let's pick up Ripley. Ripley here, you can see he's got a number on there. It says 2612. That is the hex in which he is set up, which is right here. So setup is very easy. It tells you where to put everybody. It explains where what the special rules are. What did I not talk about? Victory, right? We didn't talk about victory, victory points, etc. So victory, right? Here's victory right here. Each player is awarded victory points. So you score 1 for each casualty point on his opponent. So the Union will score for Confederate casualties, the Confederate for Union casualties. Makes sense. Each player is awarded victory points for controlling the following hexes at the end of the game. Hex 2614, Confederate control of Dunker Church is 10 victory points. Union control is 25 points. 2614 is right here. Wait, nope, that's 28. Sorry. Dunker Church is 24. What did it say? 20. Sorry about this. 2614. It's right here. So I'm a little blind here. These numbers are kind of small to me, even though I have my glasses on. Hexes 29, 10, 11, 30, 10, and 3109 are the sunken road. Those are these guys right here. Confederate deny Union control of any sunken road hex 10. Victory points for them. If the Union controls any sunken road hex, they get 25. So it's not like you need to control all of them. You just need to control one. And then hex 4214, Confederate control of the road to the Potomac Ford is 25 victory points. Union control of the road to Harper's Ferry is 50 victory points. So 4214 is 42. That's this road right here. 4214 is this road junction right here. So controlling this hex will prevent the Confederates from having access to the Potomac Ford, and the Union would have control of the road to Harper's Ferry. Okay, so obviously you're going to get victory points from casualties. So you want to inflict as many casualties as possible. But the key thing, especially on the Union side, because they get more victory points for the for these victory hexes, you have the church, you have the sunken road, and you have the road here for to the Potomac Ford and Harper's Ferry right here. So that is the setup as far as rules and victory points and everything. So I think I'm going to wrap it up here, keep this one relatively short, and the next video will be gameplay, and I'll zoom in on various spots on the board as we play, so that we can get a good look at the various a closer up look at the various maneuverings and combat and so on and so forth. So as always, I thank you for watching. If you do have any comments or questions, you can post them in the comment section, and I will do my best to give you an answer as soon as I can. I would ask if you could please consider liking, sharing, and or subscribing. Help support the channel. That is always very, very much welcome, and I appreciate that when you do it. But other than that, as I said, is it for this video. I hope you'll come back and see something else in the future. But for now, I'm going to sign off. I'm Joe. This is the Hexed Encounter channel. And until next time, as always, happy gaming.